Another thing which we're working on of interest, which we came across today, so I can't say that I'm churning up the same material all the time. There's always something new. So Mark McGee, he gave us a lead. He suggested that in the book of Job, you have a list, chapters 38, 39. You have a list, a description of different animals, altogether 12 animals. And he suggested perhaps these 12 animals are parallel to the Israelite tribes. Now we know, according to the Midrash, that each of the tribe had an animal system, had an animal symbol, as well as a regular symbol. The Bible doesn't give us animal symbols for all of the tribes, but only for some of them. For instance, it connects Judah with a lion, Gad with an old lion, a mature lion. Also, Dan is connected with a lion. Elsewhere, Dan is also connected with a serpent, with a snake. And so here we have two possibilities for the one tribe. Also, Gad, even though Gad is connected with a lion, the very name Gad means a lamb or kid. The English word kid is similar to Gad. Probably it comes from the Hebrew word Gad. Gedi. And we have a Yisachar is described as a bony or a strong donkey. So he's related to he has an animal. Naphtali is described as a female deer. And Benjamin is described as a wolf. But all the other tribes, if I remember correctly, their animal symbols are not given. But the Midrash says that they did have an animal system, that they did have an animal symbol, that each of the tribes had its own animal. So Mark McGee suggested that these animals that be found in this list, the book of Job, gives us 12 different animals. So we're still working through it, trying to find which relates to where. So one of the possibilities we came up to was a raven. One of the animals mentioned is a raven. In Hebrew, oriv. Now ravens are actually very intelligent animals. They're intelligent as individuals and also in a pack. There's a lot of folk tales. I once saw a lot of people on an email list were discussing their I think it's actually an Irish email list discussing their experiences with ravens. A lot of stories that people tell, like that. First of all, ravens, they save things. You leave a piece of jewelry hanging around, the raven will take it and take it away to its nest and store it up. You did something mean to a pack of ravens decades ago, they'll remember it. They'll show their resentment some way or other. If you did a kindness to a raven, he'll also remember it. Ravens, even though they have small brains, they're considered to be very intelligent. And Oyan, our friend Oyan mentioned, sent us a letter concerning Odin, the Scandinavian god Odin had two ravens, two sacred ravens. One of them had a name similar to the Hebrew name for thought, contemplation. And the other one had a name also of discernment. So these two, the words, the Scandinavian names could be understood in Hebrew to mean that. I'll have to look it up the exact words, but that is a parallel that Orion pointed out. And looked it up, and the ravens was considered sacred animals in Scandinavia and Scandinavian mythology. And there was one. There was actually a group of Vikings. A group of Vikings used the raven as their symbol. And these ravens and these these Vikings were the ones that seems to settled in Ireland. Ireland was settled by the Celts at the beginning. After that, the Vikings settled the eastern part of Ireland. Dublin, all of the major cities of Ireland were actually founded by the Vikings. And a good portion of the eastern portion of Ireland is actually descended from Scandinavians. And these appear to be from the tribe of Aseir. In Scandinavian mythology, you have the Aseir. The Aseir, also known as Aseir, that was the name of the tribe of gods, the ancestral gods who came from, according to the sources, came from somewhere around the Don River in southern Russia and migrated to the north and came into Scandinavia and conquered it. But the other tribes there, and eventually this section of Scandinavians dominated those who moved out and settled in Ireland and possibly also in northern England. So they were from the tribe of Aseir, whereas those remained behind were from other tribes. We often find this in migrating peoples. This is not an innovation of mine. People noticed it, people written on it. In the past, people wrote whole studies about it. That people were, when they were big in the 1800s. Ripley's History of the Races of Europe, he describes that the migrating peoples had different physical features than those who stayed behind. Their heads were different. I know that was Ripley was into head shapes. It was before DNA. But there's still something to it. Doesn't mean DNA is replaceable, but nevertheless there's still something to it. And even now forensic scientists use the features, the shape of your nose, your head shape, this, that. Yeah, they have a whole system behind it, which has some relevance. And there was claims that those who are migrating from Europe, from Germany, from Italy, from other parts of Europe to the USA were different from those who stayed behind. And we also hold by that. We said that those who went to America in the 1700s, 1800s, from Germany and from Europe were different from those who stayed behind. And also their politics were different. Their outlook on life was different. The levels of anti-Semitism were different. They were much less anti-Semitic than those who stayed behind. And there's an academic study being done on this. I can give you the references. Have the references in my works. Most of what I say, I have references to it. It's not that much original. There are some original contributions of my own, but most of what we say is derived from academic studies or studies that are respectable. So that's what we have. The tribe of Aseir means happiness. The Irish are known for being happy. When Irish eyes are smiling, all the world is smiling too, yeah. And the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing, or something like, there's a song like that. Yeah, I used to hear it when I was a child on the radio. And it was quite famous, quite well popular. And I had a friend, actually a friend of mine from France, he went all over the world, hitchhiking when he was young. And he described his experiences in different countries. And he said, in Ireland, everyone seemed to be smiling all the time. And they were very helpful. And so that was the impression of Ireland. So Aseir means happiness. And a portion of the Irish descend from the tribe of Aseir. And as we said, we think that the tribe of Aseir, his symbol was a raven was the symbol of the tribe of Aseir. It's something that we're still working on, but we'll get there. So we have other points. I mentioned might be worth mentioning. Zebulon. You probably heard the story of Zebulon, yeah. I probably may have said it beforehand, but that's the way it goes. Zebulon, it says Zebulon would dwell on the shores of the sea. Jacob, named Israel, when he blessed his sons before he died, he said Zebulon would dwell on the shores of the sea. And his border will be unto Sidon. Okay? That's what it says. So people So he's talking about the tribes when they are, after they conquer the land of Israel, they divided the land up amongst them. And part of what they conquered was now known as Lebanon. And apparently were claiming to have settled around the region of the city of Sidon. Okay? That was a Phoenician city. But according to different commentators, the blessing given to the tribes, also you can read the simple Hebrew verses this way, was, it also says, well, I'll tell you what happened in the end of times, was to be planted in the end times, towards the end times. In other words, after they'd been settled in the land, after they'd been exiled, and they went out of it. So how can this relate to the prophecy of Zebulon? It says, Zebulon shall dwell on the shores of the sea, and his border shall be unto Sidon. Okay? So, there's a German professor from Munich who claims that in ancient times people from Phoenicians and people from Carthage came to the northern areas of Europe and settled in portions of it, including Germany. And he has something to back up his claims on, old legends, old records, linguistic points. I don't know much about also archaeological indications. There have also incidentally been indications of people from Crete, which is actually Minoans. Minoans were not Phoenicians, but they were much closely connected with the Phoenicians than is known. And they found a settlement in Germany on the borders of Denmark. Again, and the place has an interesting name. It's called Edomhard. Well, Edomhard is the word Edom in the name. And hard means border, means hearth, means place. So this is the name of the place where they found this Minoan settlement. They also found other traces related to the Minoans that could also be connected up with the Phoenicians. And we have this idea that the people from Carthage, the Carthaginians were Phoenicians. They also came from Sidon and from Tyre, from the Phoenician cities on the coast. They settled in Carthage, which is northern Africa. From there, they apparently some of them moved to Western Europe. A point, so there's an incidental point which is not directly related, but is worth noting. Something that new that they've recently discovered or recently publicized. You had the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians were Phoenicians, same as the Phoenicians. They were descendants of the Phoenicians. And they also took into their armies and used local Berbers, local people who lived in that area, northern Africa, which is present-day Tunisia. And they were also traders and miners, like the Phoenicians were. And they had used gigantic ships, very large ships, according to written records. Because of that, so far they've not found any remnants of them. According to the Roman descriptions, they're gigantic ships, and they could travel vast distances. And so they had the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage over control of the Mediterranean Sea. And in the end, Carthage was destroyed. And the Carthaginians had settlements in Spain. Had settlements in Spain, quite serious settlements. They had large cities. And they'd also used Iberian Celts, people of Celtic culture in Spain, known as Iberian Celts, in their army, so they were closely connected to them. And they too suffered from the Romans beating them, from the defeat they incurred from the Romans. And the Romans were enslaving a portion of them, and they apparently had been closely associated with the Carthaginians, or some of them had. They feared the Romans would take a vengeance on them, as indeed the Romans were doing. So what they found that some of them got to Brazil. You know, Johannan's in Brazil. You can we're getting home. We're getting association. How do they get to Brazil? You have the Canary Islands in the Atlantic Ocean between Africa and South America. And we know that the Carthaginians used the Canary Islands. They went there, they got there, and they also the west coast of Africa. And it's not such a difficult feat, especially if you have a large ship, to get from there to Brazil. So they found indications that people of Carthaginian culture came to the mouth of the Amazon River in Brazil. That's the first point. They found the remains. I saw a picture of a statuette, a Phoenician statuette or Carthaginian type of statuette that they found there. And over the period, apparently there had trouble, other invaders, other people coming in, so they had to flee. So they found later African slaves. African slaves had similar experiences. African slaves would sometimes don't want to get out of focus here, but for historical parallelism, the Portuguese ruled over Brazil, and they brought in a lot of African slaves. And every now and again, the African slaves would rebel or run away in groups and set up their own enclaves, independent enclaves on the coast or here and there. And then other adventurers from Europe, not necessarily Portuguese, but from anywhere, would raid them and take them and try and make them slaves once again, so they had to flee. So they found that from this area on the mouth of the Amazon, these black settlers fled to the west. They went hundreds, thousands of miles westward, up until the footholds of the Andes in Peru. Okay? So they think that these Carthaginians and Celts who had first gotten to the mouth of the Amazon did the same. And they set up, on the footholds of the Andes, they set up a settlement. And you can see in the settlement, it's perched on the top of a hill. And it's stone houses, very sophisticated, with a sophisticated drainage system. And they have pictures of the Celtic gods, Conunius, and Celtic patterns on their pottery and on their houses, and even the houses themselves are similar to Celtic houses from the north of Spain. And the people, about 40% of the people had blonde hair. One of them had red hair. And they took DNA samples from them and found that they had also about 40% R1b West European type of DNA. And so you could say, but maybe this is from a later stage, and maybe somehow or other in recent times, Europeans, Portuguese, who knows what got there. And this is all coincidence. But they also found sources from Peru that say that Incas who ruled over Peru used to go to the settlement and take and acquire women for wives from there, and they prized them because they were light-skinned. So this light skin existed before the white man came to that area. The white man before in their era. So what's the point? What's the relevance to our story? So in the same way as the Carthaginians were taking people from Spain, Celts and so on, and taking them to Brazil, as we found in this case, they're also doing the same thing. Also, according to legend, said that they took people from Spain, from the northwest of Spain, to Ireland. In the same way. So, according to these sources, they could have done it to Germany and to Scandinavia. And so what is all this relevance? Because they found there's quite a few place names in that region, according to the maps of Ptolemy. And Ptolemy drew his map up at 100 CE. But he used sources from someone from Tyre, from a Phoenician sources about 200 or 300 years before his time. And those sources were also already old when he used them, already ancient sources. And so Ptolemy is a very good source. I use Ptolemy a lot. It's also interesting. You can see in the Middle Ages, people got the notes of Ptolemy and drew up maps. They show what peoples were, where they were, and they're usually reasonably reliable. And it's interesting. And at all events, Ptolemy has names such as Saldinga or Sudoni, all kinds of names similar to Sidon, mainly in Western Germany, in the region of Hamburg, and a little bit to the west and so on, and areas bordering the Netherlands. Why is this important? Because when the people were the Netherlands with Zebulon, says Zebulon, his border shall be unto Sidon, and that is Sidon in Europe. Also it says he shall dwell on the shores of the sea. What does it mean on the shores of the sea? The shores of the sea, you have the Netherlands, 1/3 of Netherlands is below sea level. Another third of the Netherlands is subject to inundation. Constantly they're reclaiming the land from the sea. They build dams, dikes, they have windmills. That's all you see, windmills on slabs. Always as a symbol of Holland is windmill to pump out the water. And they reclaim the land from the sea, and that's a major occupation of theirs, to reclaim the land, to protect the land, to ensure, to maintain what they've already taken back from the sea. And throughout Holland, the Netherlands, yeah, you want to build a house, you want to dig down or something, yeah, you don't really have subsoil. You dig in a couple of centimeters, and what do you get? Sea sand. In other words, literally, they live on the shores of the sea. And that was a prophecy given to Zebulon. What else we find in Ptolemy? We find Ptolemy mentioned people are. First of all, when you study the story of the Netherlands, the first Netherlands was all sea, all marsh, all was bogs, hardly people came and tried to live there, gave up. And then people came, they were coming back and forth and making attempts to reclaim the land and giving it up and having the floods, all kinds of problems, till eventually, by the skin of their teeth, by constant effort and ingenuity, they managed to reclaim Holland and make it what it was. So where did most of the people come from? From a bit to the north, a bit to the south. So a little bit to the north of Holland today in Frisia, on the border with Germany. Ptolemy mentions a people, mentions all the peoples who lived in that area according to tradition. So one of the peoples he mentioned is called, incidentally, quite highly different names, such as similar to the clans of Zebulon. And one of the names he gives is Sabalingoi. Sabalingoi with an S. Why is it? So Zebulon is with a Z? Because at that time, linguistically, they didn't, in that area, they didn't use Z. They only used S. So the ZS replaces the Z. So Sabalin, it means Zebulon. Goy is Hebrew for people. So you have a people here named the people of Zebulon in the area where they should be according to the blessing of Jacob. So that too is interesting. And then you study the attributes of Zebulon. A lot of them are similar to the people of Holland, of the Netherlands. So that's a point. We have and all the different tribes, we have similar proofs, similar points of evidence. And it's not just one here, one there, one here, together one there. How one reinforces the other, builds on the other. And sometimes we have to modify what we're saying. We find something that seems to contradict everything we said. Don't reject it, go into it, study it, look at it. And very often, instead of nullifying what we've said beforehand, it strengthens it. It puts it in a more clear perspective. And if it does nullify it, so that's the name of the game. That's what we have to go with it. But everything reinforces itself, helps itself. The Almighty Divine Providence seems to be with us on this point. So that is what we have.